Greetings, this is Willie Muhammad with National Network View. Tonight we will focus on the increased gun violence in the United States and the recent incidents of mass shootings. We will explore the America's Communication Commission's complaints, FCC, which were filed after Cardi B and Megan Stallion's performance at the Grammys. And lastly, Dr. David Muhammad from Trinidad will provide us with an update on the vaccine push in the Caribbean, as well as sharing insight on other international events. Opening statements began today in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. Prosecutors described how Chauvin kept his kneeling knee on George Floyd's neck while ignoring his pleas for help.
This today is not the trial of George Floyd. And I've heard people say that. This is the George Floyd trial. This is the George Floyd trial. George Floyd is not on trial. This is the trial of Derek Chauvin, and it should be printed and spoken about that way every single time we talk about it. This trial is about America being America for all Americans, not just some of us, all Americans. And it can be that way, and it should be that way. We have to take time now to think about what we want for our children and for our families. This family behind me is suffering, and they've been suffering since the beginning of this thing, and they're going to suffer long after all of you have gone and all of us are gone.
On Friday, we spoke with Dr. Abdul Halim Muhammad about the recent meeting between America and China. Here's a clip from the NNV segment.
You know, China in and of itself has its own domestic and international policy, and so does America. And they may clash, and its two truths may not be mutually exclusive. So, as America accuses China of abusing human rights and mistreating the Muslim population there, and then the Chinese turn around and accuse them of mistreating Black people and probably Native Americans and diminishing its own democracy, as we've seen in the Georgia laws and the 43 states that are passing these voter suppression laws. These are two truths, but they're not mutually exclusive. So they're both guilty, and they both should be warned from the voice of God in our midst, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Messiah, that they're both in trouble and they need to humble themselves lest they face the calamities that God has in store for them.
We also spoke with Charles Muhammad about the harmful foods that are being pushed upon us as a people.
Well, tell us what's behind the propaganda and the push for a plant-based diet.
Well, if you study closely, you see the usual suspects prop up from other so-called depopulation agendas. And there's a lot of money being put into these fake meat companies to put out these products to the general population. There's a worldwide push, and these mega corporations, these fast food companies and supermarket food production companies are all in together to now make the whole planet plant-based, or in a lot of cases vegan. So we believe that it is part of an agenda that these foods are not very healthy, and they will deplete the immune systems of many of the people who eat them.
On yesterday's broadcast, Sonia Muhammad shared her personal insights, experiences, and testimony interacting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Anything that comes to your mind about an experience with the minister that you want to share that you haven't had the opportunity to do so?
I had a chance to, on my way out the palace, I was on my way, you know, we was getting ready to wrap up our meeting, and I was telling the minister on my way out, I said, Brother Minister, I said, I love God. I always have, even before, you know, coming into this journey. I said, and I asked God one day, God, why can't I meet you? You know, I want to see you. I want to meet you. I said, and Brother Minister, he ran me right into you. And he looked, you know how he'll kind of squinch them eyes, and he said, I am not he, sister. But one day, we will all get a chance to see him as who he is.
We spoke with the NNV News contributor, Nina Shabazz, who shared her interview with Justin Muhammad on his move to Zambia.
Why did he select Zambia out of the 56 countries to choose from? And
Zambia is 3 times the size of the UK and has a quarter of the population. There's lots of space, lots of virgin land, and you can buy, as we did, somewhere in the nature of 250 hectares, which is like 550 acres for about $5,000. And that's really good producing land for that kind of money. I mean, sometimes the roads can be a bit problematic, and depending on where you buy, if you're buying in the city or whatever, it can be more expensive. But we've been able to make some really good deals. And it's just the price of getting started. Once we get the machinery out here, we've got quite a bit now, but once we started getting our machinery out, purchasing land, actually doing business in copper mining and whatnot, the cost of getting in, although it's high for me as an individual, as a group, it was really doable. The natural resources, there's so many: manganese, copper, timber, great land to grow crops, whether it's soybeans, maize, fruits, vegetables, bananas, and whatever. It's really great, and they've got a really high water table. So although it rains for like 4 months and then doesn't rain for the rest of the year, the amount of water that's under the ground makes it a really fertile place. So yeah, that's why Zambia. The opportunities were good and well priced.
We also spoke with activist and artist Amina Lay, who shared her insights on anti-Asian violence and solidarity between the Black and Asian community.
Why has there been limited coverage on the solidarity within communities of color even before COVID?
I think we have to think about who owns the media, who controls the narrative, and who benefits from our division, or who benefits from the lack of information, education about both of our communities. The lack of news of the current solidarity movement and historical solidarity movements creates the further division between our communities and really allows the hidden hand of our common enemy.
Ghana has made a bold move and decided to take control of their economy. Last week, we spoke with Brian E. Muhammad from the Final Call newspaper about Ghana's recent press conference.
Now, do you believe that Ghana will be more prosperous by ending its exportation of raw materials and cocoa beans to other countries? How exactly will this help Ghana?
Well, it would help because it will force the Ghanaian people to value the raw material and begin to produce factories and manufacturing plants to turn these raw materials into usable products. This way, they can sell these usable products on the market as well. It won't be a situation where the Western world is buying raw material from out of the land for nothing and then turning it into something valuable and producing that and selling that to the world, including, again, back to Africa. So if we control the whole process from start to finish, then that puts us in an advantageous position.
Master herbalist, gardener, and health coach Lady Venus shared her thoughts about the recent farming stimulus bill and educated us on herbal gardening.
And what do you think can be done to protect current Black farmers from losing their land and help a new generation of Black farmers?
Well, the first thing is that we collectively as Black people have to come together to donate and support Black farmers. So we've got to show up to Black farmers markets. We've got to see what skills that we have that we can donate to Black farms, where we can show up and not expect pay, but just show up and be there for Black farmers, whether it's helping out in the fields or being there at the farmers markets as support systems. It's very important for us as a community to stand behind Black farmers. Yes, the stimulus package and bill is wonderful for us, but if we collectively as a community of Black people don't stand behind this bill, show up and support our farmers, we will be back in the same position that we've been in since the 1920s, essentially.
We also spoke with Abdul Malik Muhammad about the benefits of fasting and his outreach group.
All right. The Fasting and Prayer, the Foundation to Success group, consists of Nation of Islam, Lost Found Christians, Hebrew Israelites, atheists, and non-denominational from North America and various other continents, including Africa. How did the group get so diverse?
People had it in their heart to look for God, and they needed some assistance, and they thought this would be a great avenue for us to double down on our prayers and to actually start fasting. It's easy to do it when you have a trainer. If you want to work out yourself and get your abs together, you're not going to do it as rigorous or as consistent as having a trainer. But they found us on social media, word of mouth. It was nothing. We didn't promote it that heavy. We just let each one teach one, and each one reach one. And that's how we got to where we're at now.
Last week, we were honored to have with us Dr. Ava Muhammad, and she gave her insight on the stance for separation and the status of that movement.
Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the greatest brainwashing was to take us away from knowing and appreciating the value and ownership of land. He advised us to put his program before the U.S. Congress. Yes. Have we put a program before Congress on separation? And if so, what is the status?
We have not officially put the program in front of the current body of lawmakers, and our intent is to do that. That program, of course, is on the back page of the Final Call newspaper, as it was on the back of Muhammad Speaks on each and every issue. But we are in the process of carrying out the things that we are demanding on that back page. We demand freedom, number one, justice, number two, equality, number three. And if we cannot obtain that, and we are obviously coming to the conclusion as a people, the one that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Louis Farrakhan have already reached, and that is we cannot get along with these people in peace. And so we are moving rapidly toward that time. But I want to caution that we are not doing this because we need their permission. We are doing this because we are a law-abiding people, and we will follow laws as long as they do not conflict with our religion. So we do not have a problem with putting this in front of the Congress, but this demand for land will be met.
So we're approaching our first break, and we'll be back with our contributors, attorney Sadiyah, Karriem, and Dr. Gary Clark. Thank you.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
This is Sister Sadiyah Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sadiyah House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sadiyahhouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
According to the Gun Violence Archive, a nonprofit group that catalogs gun violence in the United States, 104 mass shootings have occurred in 29 states plus Washington, D.C. in 2021 so far. The most recent was the shooting in Boulder, Colorado.
A grocery store in Boulder, Colorado, after reports of an active shooter. About 30 minutes ago, we saw a man with a bloody leg being led through the parking lot by police. It appears he is in handcuffs. A law enforcement source told ABC News that police were called to investigate a shooting in the parking lot, and when they arrived, a gunman opened fire on them. This is still a very active scene. We have seen police leading people out of the store, and some of those windows in the store, they are broken.
Joining us to discuss these recurring tragedies, is attorney Sadiyah Karriem and Dr. Gary Clark. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll start off the first question with you, Dr. Clark, and then Sister Sadiyah, you can chime in on this one as well. So as we talked about it, we saw with the actual video about these 104 shootings since the beginning of 2021. So Dr. Clark, what do you think is causing these continuing mass shootings to take place in America?
Well, again, let me thank you for having me on your program, Brother Willie, and also being here with Sister Sadiyah. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. But let me say this very quickly. This is the question that all that Americans are asking, folks who live outside of the United States. Everyone's wanting to know why is that we having these mass killings, these mass shootings. But the mass shooting, they're more frequent than one would imagine. You just now gave the number of how many mass shootings have taken place already this year, which is actually 66 more mass shootings than we had at this time last year, year 2020. What stands is that a mass shooting can be defined as 4 or more people being injured or fatalities in an incident, excluding the shooter, him or herself. So what explains this? It can go down into a number of issues. It can be culture. It can be guns availability. All of these, etc. I'm a political scientist by training, but the reality again is such that folks look to the social sciences and say what is the problem, and those of you who come out of your arena, the faith-based arena, but say, wait a minute, it's a matter of loss. They've lost their faith.
Yes,
so it's a multitude more than just one response.
Yes,
and that's the way it stands. And I can go into greater detail, but I do want Sister Sadiyah about how she views this. But from my perspective, it's a multitude of issues, a multitude of concerns. It goes from political culture to institutions to and I hate to say this, but also into the DNA and the fabric of this particular nation state. And that is what.
And let's hear from the attorney. What do you say, sis?
So when you look at gun violence, and we're talking about mass shootings right now, but most of the gun violence in America end up in suicide. So we're actually dealing with mental health issues. And then as it concerns the mass shootings that we see, most of it is domestic terrorism. But let me say this about the Nation of Islam. We are taught that we don't carry any weapons, not as much as a penknife. And what we found is that while we're pushing the program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we're going into our neighborhoods that's ridden with gun violence, and we go in to secure our neighborhoods with love and dignity and respect for our neighborhoods. And what we found is that there was decrease of gun violence in those particular neighborhoods. Now, different governmental entities such as Baltimore, we're starting to see that as the FOI were going in to connect with the communities and help curtail the gun violence, then you saw the powers of the governmental powers that be was slicing or taking away these particular contracts to stop us from going in. So the answer is not more guns, of course, because we've shown and proved in the Nation of Islam with love, with respect, with dignity, with education and knowledge, that we can help lift the people from the savage ways of killing. And at the root of it all is real simple. We're dealing with white supremacy, because this country was built not on wisdom and knowledge, but was built on taking land and the proliferation of the use of weapons.
Yes, ma'am.
So we got to start there.
And so what was interesting, this 21-year-old shooter bought an assault rifle 6 days before the shooting. And then 3 years in the same city, Boulder, Colorado, they were seeking to ban assault rifles, but their efforts were stopped by NRA-backed lawsuits. So Doc, and then we'll come back to Sister Sadiyah. Are bans on assault rifles the way to prevent and reduce these mass shootings?
Again, there are those who say these mass shootings are a byproduct of mental health issues, and that could very well be the case in some cases. But again, the Second Amendment is the amendment that conservatives all around the United States love and embrace. They love that amendment. The First Amendment is one that liberals love and embrace. That the freedom of speech, et cetera, that goes along with that. I would suggest that it begins with the sort of thing that you do, Brother Willie, in New Orleans, and that is you begin first with conflict resolution. And if you begin to start teaching how to engage in conflict resolution, let that be part of the curriculum. And I said the curriculum, I mean, no, not high school. You must start in first grade. You must start in kindergarten, 4-year-olds, pre-K. Once you begin to teach individuals how to engage in conflict, and how to resolve conflict because you're going to have conflict, and how to resolve conflicts as they exist. Then as you begin to proceed, and perhaps, yes, you may have mental health issues and all these other things that go along with it, but you begin to be socialized, you begin to be taught, wait a minute, there's something saying to me, how do I engage in this external conflict? But guess what? How do I engage in this internal conflict that's asking me to do something? Yes, and so what's lacking are the institutional structures that teach you conflict resolution, and also the faith-based structures that teach you how to resolve things in terms of your spirituality that is most needed in this nation state.
And what do you say, Sister Sadiyah?
Absolutely agree with Dr. Clark. Conflict resolution is a must. That's what we promote in our communities with the 10,000 Fearless. We go in and we help resolve our own issues. And when we're dealing with conflict, there's always a hidden third party. And that's an individual or a person, not some figment of our imagination. And so we always have to find who that third party is, who is promoting the conflict between us so that we can resolve our own problems. And so, it's incumbent upon us to make our neighborhoods a decent place. But at the same time, the availability of these guns, will help curb the violence if we get rid of these guns, because guns kill people. I mean, that's the reality of it. And when you look at other nations who curtailed the availability of these particular guns, you saw the gun violence go down drastically.
So I came across an article. It was on voanews.com, and it had the following headline, quote, it said, with the control of the White House and Congress, Democrats have 2 years to make big changes, right? End of quote. So President Joe Biden called for stronger background checks and a ban on assault rifles. We'll go with you, Doc, and then we'll come back to our sister. Do you think the Democrats have the guts to pass the legislation that will achieve President Biden's, what he's calling for? Because, many of the politicians, they bow down when the NRA stands up and puts its foot down.
Well, Sister Sadiyah understands Washington quite well. She knows how the politics of Washington, and that in conjunction with the politics of the states and local communities. Will he be successful? Well, the Republicans, and I say the Republicans, the Trump's administration should have taught the Democrats how to operate. They play bully ball. They're not coming there to be your friend, and they're not coming there to deal in incremental steps. Incrementalism is not the way this group of Republicans operate. This group of individuals who are in the part of the Trumpian structure, they don't operate in incrementalism. They come in, they slash and burn. And so what stands now is that I understand this. I understand President Biden. He's operating in terms of, okay, what I'm going to do now is give you a particular way. I'm going to offer the carrot, but once I've gone that way and say, wait a minute, we see it's not going to be successful, then it's time to try to do whatever you can to implement gun control. But this is again an electoral process, and we have to understand as well, if you don't have the votes and the votes are not there, you can't be successful. In politics in America, it's a zero-sum game. You either win it all, you lose it all. It's not about I just have 30% of the votes. You have to have 50% plus one. And in Washington now, it's 60 votes that matter. And so you've got to be pragmatic, and you've got to have the ability to get what you want. And you must start first. If you want to get it, let me say very quickly about the NRA, since you mentioned, they are now under all sorts of lawsuits, investigations. They could very well be declaring bankruptcy. And so now they are wounded. This is the time to attack the NRA if you intend to be successful in terms of gun control and all the other accessories that go along with it.
And what are your thoughts about that, Sister Sadiyah?
I always say, follow the money. Follow the money. We're talking about big pocket lobbyists, and so you having two sides against each other, and the lobbyists are funding both sides of this argument. So will we see real gun control? We've been talking about gun control for a while, but mass shootings still occur, and we know assault rifles are that just what they're for, is to kill. And can we ban them? Okay, so then what will they do? The government will put them out in the streets, right? And bypass legislation, just like they did crack. So the reality is the NRA, the gun lobbyists, they're in the pockets of our politicians. So it goes back to us doing for ourselves and being able to secure our own communities, and guns not being a part of that, because we've shown and proved, especially in the Nation of Islam, that we can secure our own communities and bring it back to life.
And it makes me think, as we get ready to close out to go into this third segment, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in one of his lectures, he talked about how the Second Amendment, when it was created, it was at a time where there wasn't any militias, right? But now we have a real America has a police force. Really, the police is like a military. So it's something that people need to go back and look at the Second Amendment in comparison to this time and really make some adjustments. So we're going to close out and go into our next public announcements, and we'll be back with our third segment.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
This is Sister Sadiyah Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sadiyah House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. As we renovate and restore, the former home of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have recycled the old copper gutters and downspouts and created a 1 ounce 39mm coin made of 100% pure copper. Each coin is professionally graded and has its own barcode and registration number. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Bosses at the American Federal Communications Commission, commonly known as the FCC, received over 80 complaints about Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's was considered to be raunchy WAP performance at the Grammy on Sunday. Viewers were shocked by the provocative show as the rappers twerked on a giant prop bed wearing skimpy outfits, and one person who drew the line on decency stated they felt they were watching two women at a strip club.
A lot of people are talking about Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B's performance of WAP. So I want to hear from you guys, because you got people celebrating them, saying that it was very sex positive, and they're happy that CBS allowed them to do this performance, even though they did have to completely tone it down. However, you do have, and I'm looking at comments right now, Stephanie, I see a lot of comments from moms out there, dads, saying it was highly inappropriate if you have a child in the room. And I have to agree with that. And I just want to preface it.
Candace Owens appeared on Fox News, and she talked about how the performance was an attack on American values, right? And so we'll start with you, Sister Sadiyah, then we go to Dr. Clark. So was the performance an actual attack on American values?
We've seen this since the beginning of television, where the Jezebel Mamie caricature has been displayed and has given an image of a woman who, is living in debauchery and selfless, selfless worth of herself. And so Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us that a nation can rise no higher than its woman. And so we know that there is an agenda that's being promoted. And Honorable Elijah Muhammad called us sheep going into the wrong direction. And it's hard for us to go in the right direction. And so the Hollywood, the producers, the writers, they see a trend. And so what they're doing is the agenda that they're creating is one of filth. And we're continuously feeding on this filth. And that's exactly what we're producing. And the nation cannot rise higher than this woman if we have our sisters out there in front of our babies. And this is what they see. So there is a degradation and devaluing of the women. But at the same time, we see these women are being rewarded as agents in order to produce this, on live television. So I'm highly offended. But let me say this, not just with Megan Thee Stallion and our dear, beautiful sister Cardi B, but now there's a push of the homosexual agenda. What we just recently seen with the Lil Nas X video, Montero, and his illicit sexual explicit behavior as it concerns the homosexuality, and our children are watching this. So I'm highly offended, but we have to put a clean glass next to a dirty glass, and we have to continue to fight this. And we're using our voice like you're doing right now, imagery, and we have to continue to show something of worth and value of the Black woman, and that's not it.
Thank you. Dr. Clark, what are your thoughts?
Well, actually, I was surprised when you asked when you contacted me, you wanted me to comment on that particular issue, and because it's amazing, because I was watching the Grammys, and to be honest, this particular Grammys this year was somewhat of a struggle for me to watch. I guess because of my age or whatever. I don't know that many stars anymore. But I was watching, and when that particular segment came on, and that you asked me to comment on, that's when I walked away. And so which is the nature of the American experience, is that if you don't like it, you walk away, which is what I did. and yes, and I would. Sister Sadiyah said something that in the last segment that was absolutely on point. She said, "You've got to follow the money," and when you follow the money, you see that this is where this particular segment has proven profitable. And look, here are you and I and all of us. We were all talking about this, and this is what we call, and what is called, entertainment. And it doesn't have any substantive value. The value is entertainment. And so, and as degrading as that particular form of entertainment may be, the networks and others know that this, even though they may find it to be degrading, may find it to be something where they don't want their children to look at or view, but they will feed it because it brings in dividends and dollars and all of those other and all those other things.
Right.
And so you put that into play, we see why it works. And there's a whole segment out there to where this is in that particular part of the community that is highly profitable. And the sin taxes and all the things that they engage in. We just pornography, the strip clubs, and yes, you said they were twerking, they were scissoring. Yes, there is a market out there. Is that market be on national television and at the Grammys? And it's not something that I prefer to see, and I did walk away from it because. Right. And then you asked me to comment on it. Yes.
And let me say this: it was interesting in preparing for this. 8.8 million people tuned in to watch the Grammys, but the report says only a little over 80 people filed complaints. And it made me think about something the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in his book Torchlight for America. He said that the American public has become proverbial swine and lovers of filth. She has the book, right? Yes, and he said they've become that because of what has been, because of what they're being fed. So that's my question now. I'll come with you, Sister Sadiyah, then we'll go back to Doctor. Has the American public become this proverbial swine because of the content that it is constantly fed?
Absolutely. You know, we are what we eat, and if physically we're eating trash, then we're going to produce obesity. We're going to produce disease and a death-like condition. And so, you know, man is what his thoughts are and what his heart is. And so spiritually speaking, our artists have a duty and a responsibility. And now what they're doing is feeding filth to popular culture. And so what's going to be produced? We're talking about mass shootings earlier, but there's a consequence of this type of behavior, not financially, just financially, but we're talking about the degradation and the devaluing of the social fabric. We're talking about single parent homes. We're talking about, improper male-female relationships, destruction of the whole family unit, destroying of the community, of a nation. I mean, this has major implications. And when the woman doesn't understand her value as a woman, and that, she is beautiful in the sight of God, and the man does not understand the value of that woman enough to protect her from herself, then what we see is a civilization that has fallen like Babylon, like Roman, like Sodom and Gomorrah. And the wrath of God, he's looking upon this. But if we understood and we adhere to see, spiritually speaking, because we're not just talking about physical or money or material, but it has a whole big implication. So we got to pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. And Doc, go ahead, Doc. You want to
go ahead. Yeah.
Now, there's another question, something that she said made me think about. In response to this, Cardi B said that she never declared the song to be for women's empowerment, nor did she ever say it was appropriate for children. And she went on to say how it's parents' responsibility to shield their children from such and stop allowing celebrities to raise their children. And I thought about how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about how record execs and program managers and music producers, they exploit and manipulate the talent of our young brothers and sisters where they feel they need to put out this type of content. So who bears the responsibility? Is it the parents? Is it the organizers of such awards? Is it the record execs, or is it the artists?
It's all of them. It's ability. When you have a platform, a huge platform such as hers, and she has a young daughter as well, what are you feeding them? And then you can't just fault her because she can only do so much. And then you look at the hidden hand, and of course the money and those who are producing this, because she couldn't do it on her own. So we need to go to the root of it. And then we need to make each and every individual responsible for what they are projecting. And you can't use deceptive intelligence and saying it's not my fault. You got to control your own children. No, you're putting this for millions of people to watch. So there is a responsibility. You just don't want that responsibility.
Yeah, and the responsibility, regardless of what happens, regardless of all of the external dynamics, the responsibilities falls on the individuals, the household. And it may not be a two-parent household, maybe a single-parent household, but the responsibility falls on those individuals who have control over the youth as best you can. My generation, and not to say I'm like some old man, that was a great generation, but the music of the 70s was music that engaged in consciousness. And it was conscious music, and it had a social fabric to it, and it had value to it. And that's how I try to encourage the people that I know who engage in spoken word, and the folks I know that engage in music, and the rappers that I know out there. I try to tell them and say, you know what? Rap about something that has social value, that has some redeeming value, because it is indeed a form of expression, and it takes a skill to rap. It takes skill to sing and perform and do all those sort of things. But make it have some substantive value that can not only benefit you as an individual, but benefit the whole, benefit the race, and benefit all of us. And that's always been my statement to individuals.
So what about those who say, like the artists who hear that, and Sister Sadiyah, you can respond to this. The artists who hear that and say, when I rap about clean stuff, when I try to show more modesty, the people don't come out and support it. I got to eat.
We got to keep pushing. We got to raise the level of consciousness of our people. In the 70s, you talked about, the consciousness of the music that we have. It's because the people behind the music had higher consciousness. So we have to create our own labels. We got to push our own music, and we have to keep putting the clean glass up next to the dirty glass and speak out on this kind of thing. So, those in these positions that we don't see that is promoting this filth, this filthy diet that we are ingesting, we got to get them removed and then create our own. And there are too many platforms for us not to join or not to create. Technology is rampant right now. We can do this, but we have to keep sounding the alarm, sounding the horn, sounding the trumpet.
Now, Doc, you mentioned about the music during your age. What do you say to some who they've showed pictures of Shaka Khan, Tina Turner? You know what I'm saying? They'll say, hey, it was like that back then too.
Oh yeah, they talked about that. They talked about the blues, and they talk about what the blues say, and all this, et cetera. But within all of that genre of music, you still had a core level of consciousness that existed, and the nature of our society now is that every generation has successively had dilemmas with the next generation in terms of how the entertainment, all what goes along with it. That they found fault with that particular generation, and this is not just part of the American experience; it's part of that whole Western civilization experience in terms of the fault that they have with the next generation and how it works. But again, we must understand the nature, and because we're only given a certain length of time on this world, on this earth, and so being, we've got to give that kind of consciousness to the people that we can touch. We may not can change the world, but we can change those individuals who are part of what we do. All of you are opinion multipliers. You have constituencies. You have people that listen to you and follow you. This network itself is doing what should be done, and that's the beauty of what you do. You think you're beating a dead horse, but guess what? There are people out there that hear, that's listening. That person may be someone that's 8 years old, and you and I are all gone, and we're dust. That person's going to be making a difference. That's the deal of what's done right now.
We thank both of you all for joining us for these two segments. We definitely look forward to having you all as continued monthly contributors. We're going to go to our next break, and we'll be back after these announcements.
Thank you.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline reads, Injustice yesterday, no justice today. After many high-profile cases, blank political statements are made. Public tears, street protests, and cries of outrage are expressed, but no one goes to jail. From George Floyd to Emmett Till, after the pleas and promises, black people still get little to no justice. The question is, why? What have we learned? And can this injustice system ever change? Page 3 of the Final Call covers the full story. This FCN Volume Number 25 edition features the middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. The message is entitled, Justice, a Prerequisite to Life. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com, and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call Cover Report.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
So, skepticism about the safety of the COVID vaccine is not only present in America, but is also present in the beautiful island of Jamaica.
Vaccination against the coronavirus has started in some parts of the world, and Jamaica has already placed its order for its portion. But even with the reported thousands dying overseas and the more than 200 who have lost their lives to the virus locally, many Jamaicans still believe something is amiss. Oswald Comrie from Trenchtown is one of those persons.
No, I wouldn't say the coronavirus make people die in a sense of, more than before now. It's just that I see what happened is that ones have been paying mind to people who are dying at this time now more than before. And certain illness of what they have been revealing more than what usually reveal when a one died. You just hear one died and you don't hear nothing what the cause of it is all about.
Despite this skepticism, the Pan American Health Organization recently reported that Jamaica is scheduled to be the first of 15 Caribbean countries that will begin to receive 2.1 million dosages of the COVAX vaccine by May of this year. Joining us today as part of our international news segment is Student Minister David Muhammad, Dr. David Muhammad of Trinidad. He will discuss with us this recent revelation about these vaccines coming to the Caribbean, as well as share some insight on some other international topics as well. Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Walaikum salam, brother.
So let's get right to it. As the islands await the arrival of the vaccine, can you share with us what is the general sentiment in the islands regarding it? Is there a heavy presence of anti-vaccine movement, or let's get these vaccines and let's take them?
Well, first of all, there is a lot of politics in the conversation over the vaccines. There has been statements by some heads of government in Caribbean countries that they insist on only administering vaccines that have received approval by the World Health Organization. In response, of course, we have put information out into the public space highlighting the long list of cases of medical genocide going back to the Tuskegee experiment of 1982, 100 black men deliberately infected with syphilis by the United States government, and then the SV40 containing cancer-causing monkey virus vaccines for polio, the World Health Organization's smallpox vaccine campaign in Africa from 1966 to 1977, and the hepatitis B 1978 vaccines by the Center for Disease Control in America in 6 cities given to homosexual men, which were the first men to get HIV/AIDS. So we are doing our best to put information out there into the public space about the issue regarding trustworthiness, including the 1996 Kano, Nigeria Pfizer vaccine issue, where the government of Nigeria sued Pfizer for $8 billion. And Pfizer got away with paying $175 million to members of family, to the 200 children that they experimented on. So in Caribbean, there's a lot of politics over this. You keep hearing rumors about certain business agencies, private firms and corporations that have access to distributing vaccines. And then we're hearing also on the other side of vaccines being offered by China and India. India have already given, I think, close to 500,000 vaccines to different Caribbean countries. And then the government and then the opposition get entangled in these back and forth debates over the sincerity in the position involved. But we're doing our best to keep the information out there in the public space.
Yes, sir. We appreciate that. And also, we want to just shift gears to talk about another international event that has been grabbing news headlines. The historic Suez Canal has found itself, the waterway was blocked and out of commission by a container ship that is said to be the size of the Empire State Building. So from an international perspective, what are your thoughts about the impact of this?
Well, I understand that the passageway has just been reopened, maybe a couple hours ago or so. But while that issue was taking place, there was a positive in it, in that it caused us to revisit the historical context of that particular region. First of all, the Suez Canal is in Northeast Africa. It hasn't really been identified as African territory. And in addition to that, it was a man-made ditch that was largely responsible for this ideological breaking away of Africa from the so-called Middle East. And when this ditch was built, the east side of the Suez Canal became the Middle East, especially with Israel on the east side of it and Egypt on the west side. And it reignited a lot of those discussions about the historical context of the rights to the geography of that land and how much it really meant to Europe. And if we go to conversations about the Panama Canal, and again, the amount of subtle or blatant, surreptitious, mischievous government projects and coups and assassinations that were all behind getting these passageways for trade. I mean, it's something like what the lessons say about Christopher Columbus looking for a way to get east by going west or vice versa. It's all there, geoeconomics and geopolitics. So it was interesting while it lasted, I guess.
Yes, definitely. And also, this is another is in America is consuming the news headlines, but I know it's also being shown all over the world. The mounting challenges that President Joe Biden is now facing. He did his first formal news conference, and he really didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but the news media kept hammering him on the response to the undocumented migrant children arriving at the U.S. border. And from someone like you're from Trinidad, and how does America look in this global perspective dealing with this issue of immigration?
Well, the first thing to note is that the United States of America is an immigrant society. In addition to that, through the Monroe Doctrine of the mid-1700s, as an immigrant society that has been led by white supremacist perspectives, they have manipulated political situations in other countries by the misuse and abuse of their resources, enslavement of nationals from other parts of the world, a neo-colonization, invasions of places like Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Haiti, and as the first Roosevelt declared America as a world's policeman. So that kind of interference and obstruction of progress in other countries would inevitably cause the citizens of those other countries to seek a better life in the same country that was responsible for robbing them of their resources in the first place. So people from the Caribbean are going to America simply because America was able to exploit Caribbean labor via the African slave trade, persons coming in from Africa, the Middle East. America has manipulated political decisions all over the world. So now people are trying to get back to America to have access to those resources that they lost. If you look at the geography of the Americas in general, United States is North America. Colombia and Peru are South America. North America has an appetite for illegal narcotics that are produced and manufactured in South America, and they pass through Central America. And then the crime, the violence, the gangs, the social displacement, the family destruction, the juvenile delinquency, abuse and addiction, all of those problems that are caused by America's addiction to drugs, getting them from South America. There's now a region, Central America, dead in the middle, that has suffered the consequences of that greed and appetite. So now people from places like El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Panama are flocking into the United States of America. And then they're getting themselves involved in a lot of the troubles, like the MS-13 gang, for example. And then they're being Americanized in the most negative way through the criminal industry. and then being deported back to Latin America. So you have, for example, MS-13, according to one statistic, the amount of gang members of MS-13 that were deported from the United States back into Latin America is 1.5% of the population of El Salvador. Imagine if you have that much convicted gang members being deported back into a population that is already having enough challenges and troubles trying to deal with their crime problem. And it's being recycled over there. So America has come like a strainer where they export problems to other countries. Meanwhile, in these same countries, there are brain drains of university graduates, doctors and lawyers, scientists who leave the third world to go over to the first world for a higher standard of living and quality of life.
So let me ask you this question. As members of the Nation of Islam, we talk about how one day we will assume the seats of rulership. So if we were to be placed in rulership in America tomorrow or next week, from what your understanding of the teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad and your experience, what would be a way we will resolve this issue of immigration, the challenges of it?
You see, in point number 4 of what Muslims want in the Muslims program by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he really gave the rationale for reparations by identifying the request for a separate land, state, or territory, not to be given as charity, but to take into consideration the historical context of how we got to where we are. That is the primary concern that must be incorporated into the conversation. The historical injustices against different peoples. Black people are not and have never been racist towards anyone else. What has been accused as being racism on our part has been largely reactionary. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted us to be proactive in seeking independence, self-determination, to ensure that we have a land of our own qualifications, to be able to provide our own food, clothing, shelter, education, transport, and health, and not be dependent. That within itself will reverse the bigotry and intolerance and xenophobia of racism, because we would have developed among ourselves self-respect. So we have to think as a nation and not just an organization or a movement, but think from the point of view of being able to provide all of our own needs. And even if we are in a different geographical location in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, or even over in the United Kingdom, or even on the continent of Africa, if we think nation and we pool our resources, unite, and open skills banks and think tanks, then we will be better positioned to be able to establish a nation for ourselves. And we will also, through that respect that we would have earned, also earn the cooperation from other nations that is necessary to establish these long-term goals and objectives. But we must, of course, educate the younger generation so that by the time they get to the age of taking up leadership positions, that they won't have to be taught and trained and convinced and lectured to and preached to. That would already be their nature, their second nature. And then they could take it a step further by establishing the kind of power, the people organized working economic rebirth that we have suffered from in this past generation gone by.
Yes, sir. And we thank you, my brother, for coming on and giving us that insight during our international news segment. We look forward to you joining us again on next month as well. And so we also thank each and every one of you all who have tuned into National Network View. Remember to hit the subscribe button. Remember to hit the like button. Remember to hit the share button and let everybody else know that we have our own daily news network. We need your support. Thank you.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.